Today we're going to be talking about the quadratic formula. And I want to make sure that you guys write down our quadratic formula. It's how we solve an equation, a quadratic equation, for a solution or roots when we can't factor. Okay, so first you try and factor, then you use your quadratic formula. And it is used to solve for a quadratic equation that is written in standard form, which means we have to solve, you have to get one side to 0. And keep that in mind. That's what you want to do. And I kind of expect you guys already remember this from Algebra 1. Okay, so our first example. I need to get one side to be 1, so I'm going to subtract the 7 over. We get A to be 1, B to be 6, and C to be -9. So now it's just a matter of plugging in the opposite of B, plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Underneath our radical, we have the square root of 72 all over 2. Now, I want you guys to give me the answer in simplest radical form and decimal. So, simplest radical form, you have to put any perfect squares that are in 72. Well, we know 72 is 36 times 2. So 36 times 2 . Now remember, this stands for two answers. And this plus or minus in the middle there, that's going to be -6 over 2 plus and minus 6 root 2 over 2, which is going to simplify to -3 plus or minus 3 root 2. Now the 2 and the root 2 can't cancel because the root 2 is locked inside that radical. So what you have to think about is that when you're canceling, a number in the denominator has to cancel the same with each one of our numbers in our numerator. So you have to cancel. What's the largest number that goes into 6, 6, and 2? Well, that was 2, so that's how I got that answer. Now plugging into your calculator. Okay, so this is how you plug in to your calculator. So we had -3 plus 3 times, you don't have to put the multiplication symbol in. Square root is second x squared, square root of 2, and press enter. Now all I need to change is this plus sign to a minus sign. So I can just do second entry arrow back and change this to a minus sign, press enter, and there's your answer. Now that I've plugged into my calculator, I get one answer to be 1.24 to 2 decimal places, and the other one was -7.24. Our next equation, and this one should actually have a plus sign in the middle here. So make sure you realize that's a plus sign. So now you want to get everything over to one side. And I would make sure that your x squared term is positive. So I'm going to add it over. I'm going to subtract the 5x over. And I'm going to subtract the 1 over. So now our a is 6, b is 4, c is -1. So we do our opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And remember, these are x equals. These are two values that we're solving for x. So simplifying underneath the radical. Underneath the radical, we get 40 over 12. Now again, I want it in simplest radical form. So I can pull out a 4, which I'm not pulling out a 4, I'm pulling out the square root of 4, which changes to 2. Now, what is the largest number that goes into all three numbers of the 12, the 2, and the -4? 2 goes into each one of those, so I have a -2 plus or minus root 10, I didn't change that root 10, all over 6. Now keep in mind, when you're plugging this in your calculator, you have two answers. You're going to have -2 plus root 10, all in parentheses because that's all in the numerator, divided by 6. And then we're going to have -2 minus root 10 divided by 6. And I love this every year. Guys are always asking me, where's the plus and minus sign? There is no plus and minus sign. What you have to remember is that these, one of them is plus, one of them is minus. You have to do it twice. Okay, let's find the other one. And the other one was a little bit more complicated. On the slide, I showed you guys this syntax, or how you would type it in your calculator. You have to put the whole numerator in parentheses. So we start our parentheses, -2 plus the square root of 10. Now if your calculator looks like mine, you kind of have to arrow over because that's all you want in your parenthesis. The other guys, you're going to have to close your parenthesis out. And then close that parenthesis that I have there. That encloses your whole numerator. And then I do divided by 6. So that was one of our answers. Again, all I have to change is this plus sign to a minus sign. So second entry, make sure that plus sign is highlighted, change it to a minus, press enter, and there's our second answer. So from our calculator, we found that our -2 minus root 10 over 6 was -0.86, and plus was 0.19. Example 3. Again, we have to get one side to be 0, so I'm going to add these 6 over, add these 7 over to get 0. Again, you can write out the a, b, and c. I'm not going to do that. So we have the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And again, we're solving for x values. So underneath the radical, that is going to simplify to a -20 over 4. Now -20, I can pull out an I and the square root of 4, which is 2. I'm left with a 5 underneath, all over 4. Now the 6, the 2, and the 4 can all cancel. The largest number that goes in the 6, 2, and 4 is 2. So I get negative 3 plus or minus I root 5 all over 2. And I'm just going to leave that answer like that. There's a special part of our quadratic formula that's called the discriminant. And the discriminant is this piece that's underneath the radical. And that tells us the types of solutions that we have. Okay, used to determine the number of real roots or real solutions. Okay, so let's look at that. If a part underneath the radical is positive, we were getting 2 real solutions. And we talked about this in an earlier video. Your graph is going to hit your x-axis at 2 points. Now if it's 0, basically that piece would go away. So I would have 1 solution. Hey, what's that negative b over 2a? The vertex. Okay, so our vertex is going to be sitting right on the x-axis. And now what if we had an imaginary number under there? Or if this number was less than 0, we can't take the square root of an imaginary number, or a negative number, and get a real number out, hence the name imaginary number. So therefore we would have 2 non-real or 2 complex solutions, or no real solutions. Okay, so that discriminant is super important to us. Okay, our next example, find the number and types of each one of the solutions. Okay, so remember your discriminant, b squared minus 4ac. Not the square root, just the piece underneath. Put this, make sure it's in standard form. So we have b squared minus 4ac, and that is going to simplify to negative 8, which is less than 0. So this means we have no real solutions. So now again we do b squared minus 4ac. We get 0. 0 equals 0. So we have 1 real solution. Okay, our vertex is going to be sitting on our x-axis. And then lastly, eight is greater than 0, so we have 2 real solutions. Okay, so I have a little thing here. What does this mean? Okay, this means that The blue one is the last one that we did. We had two real solutions, 2 points where we hit the x-axis. The red equation was the one where our vertex is sitting right on the x-axis. And then the green one, our graph was all above the x-axis. We didn't hit the x-axis at all. So we had no solutions. Remember, solutions are where we hit the x-axis. Okay, so which method do we use? Always try and factor. First, try and factor. If you can't factor, go to the quadratic formula. Completing the square is a last resort. And this is only if I ask you to. And I have students every year who do completing the square for everything because I stress it so much because students struggle with it so much. But so completing the square is a last resort, only if I ask you to. And so if you're fast forwarding through this part of the video, you're not going to realize that. Okay? Only if I ask you to. Completing the square, only if I ask you to. Only if I want you to. Don't do it unless I ask you to. Go to your quadratic formula. That's your new best friend. Factoring. Try and factor first. Okay, pause the video and take a minute to write down this example because I always love these examples of physics. Okay, so we have a player who makes a scoop that releases the ball with an upward velocity of 34 feet per second. The function, this function gives us height as a function of time. So along our x-axis we have t seconds. After t seconds, we know the height of our ball. Now we want to know how long. How long is a measure of time. How long does it take for the ball to reach the ground? So our ball goes up like this. Goes up, 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 back, down. Here's our ground. If the ball is sitting on the ground, what is its height above the ground? The height is equal to 0. So we set our height equation equal to 0. Now, try and factor. Since I have t in both terms, I know I can factor out a t. I want to make this coefficient on the t squared term positive. The largest number that goes into 16 and 34, unfortunately, is 2. So I factor out a negative 2. And so I'm left with 8t minus 17. Now set negative 2t equal to 0 and 8t minus 17 equal to 0. So I have t equals 0 and t equals 17 over 8. Or 2 1/8 seconds. Now which one makes sense? Well, they both make sense, but he starts here. He starts here, scoops his ball up, and this is after 2 1/8 seconds later. Will the ball ever reach a height of 20 feet? Meaning, is my h ever going to equal 20? I put this equation in standard form. Basically, we want to know, does this have a solution? Okay? Do we have a solution? That's where our discriminant comes in. So doing our discriminant, we have b squared, 34 squared minus 4ac. When I put that in my calculator, we get negative 124. So our discriminant is negative. When the discriminant is negative, we have no Solution. So our ball, will the ball ever reach a height of 20 feet? No, because we had no solution to our discriminant equation. So 20 feet is probably up here. Our ball may only get to like 16 or 17 feet. Okay, there are your 2 lesson questions. And please make sure those lesson questions are submitted on time.